Hello. You are listening to the Grieving Parents Sharing Hope podcast. We are here to walk with parents on their unwanted journey of child loss, guiding them to a place of hope, light, and purpose, not in spite of their child's death, but as a way to honor his or her life. And now, here is your host, author, speaker, and bereaved parent, Laura Diehl.
Hi, thank you for joining me today. I think we can all agree that when our child dies, there is now a before and an after. Today's guest, Mick Wienholt, shares his story of losing his firstborn son, Luke, and how that loss changed not only his life, but his eternity. Now, before we get started, let me introduce you to him. Mick's story is one of grace and redemption. His firstborn son, Luke, was a full-term stillbirth. As a result of Luke's death, everything changed for Mick and his wife, as their child's death was the turning point where they both began a relationship with Jesus. 18 months after Luke's death, Mick and his wife welcomed their first living child into their family. They were also blessed to have identical twin boys 7 years after Luke's death and birth. Mick hosts the When You Look podcast, where ordinary people share their extraordinary experiences, and you get to decide if it was coincidence or God. A native of Maryland, Mick and his family live in the greater Richmond, Virginia area. So when I record in the Hopemobile, you often get to hear what I hear. So I'm just letting you know there might be some background noises in here. Now, I don't want to take any more time, so let's listen to the extremely encouraging talk I had with Mick Wienholt. All right, well, Mick, welcome to the podcast. I have really been looking forward to this chat with you since you first contacted me.
Yeah, absolutely, Laura. Truly a pleasure to be here for all the right reasons and sort of all the wrong reasons all at the same time.
Oh, so true, so true. Yes, yes. Well, I want to start out by asking you to share Luke with us, please.
Yeah, so Luke Robert is our firstborn, and he was a full-term stillbirth. 21 inches long, 6 pounds, 8 ounces, 39 weeks gestationally, so 1 week away from his due date. And that was January 5th of 2012 that he was delivered. And we believe that he died in utero somewhere late the night of January 3rd into the morning of January 4th. So roughly a day before he was actually delivered. Because it was January 4th when we learned that he didn't have a heartbeat any longer once we had gone to the hospital because he was no longer moving.
Oh, so that's what sent you in to get it checked out?
Yeah. I had gone out to walk our dogs in the morning, which was normal chore routine for us. We lived in a townhouse in Colorado. We had 2 dogs. The townhouse did not have a yard of any sort. So we had to take our dogs out. I took them out. Came back in and, my wife naturally is quite tired at this point. Not a lot of sleep happening at the 39-week mark.
Right.
And she's standing in the kitchen crying. And I immediately knew something was up. I said, "What's going on?" And she said, "He hasn't moved since last night." And we called the doula. And she said, immediately go into labor and delivery. And so we did that. I don't know, 45 minutes later, by the time, we got ourselves cleaned up enough to go to the hospital. Oh, Laura. And it was one ultrasound machine and tech after another. And then they bring in the doctor and everybody knows what's happening. You know what's going to happen when they tell you, okay, maybe there's something wrong with this ultrasound machine.
Oh, no. Wow.
We'll just get another machine. We'll just check because, they can't find the heartbeat. That I should have been more clear about that. And then, second ultrasound tech can't find the heartbeat. So they're like, let's get somebody more experienced. Let's bring a doctor in. And everybody, of course, knows it's really not about that. But there's still some degree of hope. And then the doctor, in this case, it was a male doctor, and he did his wanding and was unable to find a heartbeat because it wasn't there. And he said, and I do not believe I will ever forget this. He said, I am sorry to tell you this, but your baby no longer has a heartbeat.
Mm.
And we'd known that moments before, but it's another thing to confront it when you hear it. You know what I mean? And our lives changed. My wife and I, our lives changed forever at that point, and then even more so shortly after that. So
Yeah. Can I ask then? So did she carry Luke for a few more? I mean, so she had to wait and do a natural delivery knowing. Oh, I just cannot imagine. I'm so sorry. Wow.
yeah, so that was her immediate response is, okay, get my baby out of me.
Yeah.
And, that was her pressing very hard on a C-section, and they didn't want to do that. I don't think that that's actually standard. I think it's an induction, and you're delivering your stillbirth vaginally, if at all possible. But yeah, my wife's desire was just for it to be out of her, be over. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that
Oh
clinically.
no,
It's just
I mean
it's
to
such a
go through labor and
terrible spot.
delivery knowing. So then you guys were just sent home to wait?
No, so at that point we began the induction
Okay.
process.
Okay.
So she was immediately
Wow.
induced. That takes many, many, many hours, and so it was,
Mm-hmm.
it was the next morning. So now January 5th, when she is, dilated enough in order to have the actual delivery occur,
Mm-hmm.
because she was not in any in any delivery mode. You know what I mean? There was no
Right, right.
effacing, there was no
Mm-hmm.
dilation, there was nothing along those lines.
Right.
And so you're going from ground zero to
Yes. Forcing it to
baby.
happen. Yes.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it took, I wouldn't say 24 hours, but
Mm.
probably took maybe 20-ish, because it was morning to the following morning, basically,
Mm.
when she actually delivered Luke. So yeah, my wife's first delivery was our son is a full-term stillbirth, 6 pounds, 8 ounce,
Mm.
21 inches long, Luke Robert. Robert
Wow.
was his middle name. Yeah.
Wow. And so often we hear from the moms, but it's very rare that we get to hear from the dads. Thank you for being willing to come on and share this with us.
My pleasure. Like I said,
Yeah.
happy to be here for all the right reasons and
And the
all the
wrong.
wrong
Yes.
reasons.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So, Mick, when our child passes, it's everything becomes a before and after. And you do this as well, but the birth of Luke, the birth and death, I just found a new term, birthing into heaven.
Mm,
Birthed
mm,
into heaven.
yeah.
So as Luke was birthed into heaven, you have a different before and after that goes beyond this. And I've heard you say that before losing Luke, you knew about God, but you wanted him as far away from you and your wife as possible. So let's go there. Can you share in a nutshell kind of the story behind that? I mean, God had already spared your life as a teenager through an avalanche that should have taken your life. Why did you want nothing to do with God?
Wow, Laura. That
We're going to
that's
go deep, Mick.
it's a wonderful question, and I'm truly glad to answer it. I wanted nothing to do with God because of my pride.
Mm,
I wanted to run my own life. So for the first 31 years of my life, that's essentially what I did. I grew up in a Christian home. I went to Christian based education from first grade through 12th grade.
mm,
I was very familiar with God, very familiar with Jesus, very familiar with the Holy Spirit, all of that. And the reason I'm saying it that way is I'm choosing my words here very carefully, because I definitely knew about God, but I didn't have any relationship with
mm-hmm.
him.
Yes.
I wanted his rules, his expectations as far away from me, and later in life, as far away from me and my wife as possible. So you mentioned that I got saved by God as a teenager. So I was 19 years old and should have and would have died as a result of an avalanche that I caused myself. And yet, 3 weeks after that, I'm back to life, relatively back to normal, and still wanting absolutely nothing to do with God. So you fast forward another 12 years to when I'm 31 and Luke dies. And that is when, speaking for myself, but I know this as well for my wife, that is when we began a relationship with God. So the before is all about pride. It's all about ego. It's all about selfishness. And the after is, meaning with Luke, is beginning a relationship with King Jesus that has now been going for 13 and a half years. And we are so blessed.
I just see you light up
So
just saying
blessed.
that. I mean,
Well, the reason why, and I think it's just important for the listeners to hear, I'll make this particular point very quick, and that is that we see Luke's death as the single greatest and most tangible blessing in our lives because it completely changed the trajectory of my life, my wife's life, and that of our subsequent children.
that's one reason why I'm so excited to talk to you today. First of all, I want to go back to the whole pride thing. I have said for a long time, because I used to do children's ministry, international children's ministry, and a phrase that would come up a lot is that rules without relationship equals rebellion. And I always think of that in terms of parents, kids and parents. But recently it was brought to my attention that's the truth with God too. Rules without relationship equals rebellion. So if you see God as nothing but a bunch of rules and you don't have that relationship, then why would we want anything to do with him?
I couldn't agree more. And that was absolutely my experience, both with parents and with God.
Aha, okay. So take us through the journey. You have said you had no choice but to come to God with your grief and pain. Now, I don't know how much you have an opportunity because the ministry you have is really awesome, but it's not for grieving parents like me. And so I don't know how often you really get a chance to talk with bereaved parents or bereavers, but so many of them, the reason God just really filled us with a passion to do what we do is because so many believers have their faith shattered and they do the opposite. They walk away from God because you didn't. I did all the right stuff. I went to church, I prayed, I read my Bible, I tithed, I did everything I was supposed to do, God. And then why didn't you keep up your end? And so your testimony is the opposite. So why do you feel like you had no choice but to come to God with your grief and your pain?
Laura, I can define that answer in a single word, and that is by grace. But we should go beyond that and expound on that a little bit. So I really can't take credit for it. Okay. It just happened. And yet I'm fully adult. I'm fully within myself. I'm fully lucid. You know what I mean? This certainly was a decision,
Right.
but I didn't lay out a list of pros and cons. It was essentially the foundational understanding that I had of God basically came to a head. And that was when in time of need, and this was a colossal time of need.
Right.
He is who I go to. And the need was to deal with the pain.
Right.
We felt as if we had a Luke-shaped hole in our heart. And so we sought him to fill the hole for Luke or of Luke, right? But it was really we're in pain, we're in an acute situation, we need something. Sort of, and admittedly, that was a bit patternistic. I mean, I didn't have a relationship with God as mentioned, but I certainly knew him and would pray to him occasionally, typically during periods of high acute need. You know what I mean?
When
I
you're
was
in an
essentially,
avalanche?
yeah, and wanting to essentially rub the lamp and get the
Yes,
genie god
exactly.
to come
Yes,
out
yes,
of it.
yes.
Um,
I actually
now,
have as a children's minister, I still take objects with me when I talk to parents, and I have a little genie in a lamp.
mm,
We rub it, we say the right words, and God's supposed to pop out and say, "Your wish is my command." But then who's
that's
really
right.
God?
Exactly. Exactly. So transparently, without thinking of it, it was mostly a help us through this pain.
Hmm.
But as mentioned, the pain was viewed by my wife and I as this Luke shaped hole.
Mm-hmm.
And what God revealed over the handful of months that came after Luke's death was that we had a God shaped hole in our hearts.
Hmm.
And that was the key distinction for us, that we then began an actual relationship with God. It wasn't just okay, now we, pray more, or
Mm-hmm.
we got over this hump and now we're through it and we're 18 months, post, and the much of the grief has subsided. And so we go back to a life of keeping God at a distance. This was, we need you. And he helped us see how much we needed him and how much he loved us through all of that.
Wow. I think something that you said is really important in that you made the choice. You made the choice that I don't understand, but I know who I need, not what I need, who I need to help me
Hmm.
through this. I think that might be the struggle with a lot of bereavers, is that I know I need him, but I'm so mad at him
Mm.
for letting this happen. But we can make a choice, and over again, sometimes it has to be to release the anger and lean more into, God, I need you more than I need to be angry at you.
Yeah. If I could speak on that for just a second,
Yes,
so that,
please.
all of the folks that are listening to this, and especially the bereaved parents, aren't thinking that this is all just sunshine and roses to the extent that it can be. There was a significant amount of anger. And interestingly enough, some of it related to our very good friends who were pregnant at the exact same time. Their son was due later in the year, February, I think. So we're not that far off, because again, Luke is due in January. This other couple, their son is due in February. Well, that mom had some preeclampsia issues, and their son ended up being born on January 11th, which was Luke's due date.
Oh, wow.
And you can imagine there was some sensitivity there, sensitivity
Mm-hmm.
to the point of where, so we're now 6 days in, okay? 7 days in when you count the
Mm-hmm.
fourth, where we
Right.
know that he has died, okay? So we're a week into what I'll call a new relationship with God, okay? On
Mm-hmm.
very unfamiliar terms.
Yeah.
And when I found out that their son was born, and on the day that he was, I was praying, and I was praying with lots of anger. There was a significant amount of frustration. So let's have folks imagine me sitting on a couch, and I am talking out loud as if God is in the room, and I am basically as fired up and as upset as
Mm-hmm.
you could imagine a person being.
Yeah.
And I said to God out loud, you couldn't have picked another bleep. Okay, I'm bleeping
Right,
myself
right,
here.
right. Yeah.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
day for him to be born.
Right.
That's literally what I said.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I literally heard the audible voice of God respond to me and say, you were supposed to pray for them.
Oh, wow.
So I was shaking my fist at God in this moment. And I mean, I was fired up. You couldn't have picked another
Mm-hmm.
blank day.
Mm-hmm.
And he responded with, you were supposed to pray for them. And we
Hmm.
had been doing that, which was quite interesting. Okay. At one point, my wife and I are sitting in our car as we know the preeclampsia and everything else is going down. And we prayed vehemently. Don't take another one, Lord. Don't take another one. And we're days into this new relationship because we didn't want them to have to face and deal with and experience the pain that we had.
Right.
And then it's not that many days or hours later that I'm having this conversation with God. And his response was, you were supposed to pray for them. So I'm saying all of this. I don't want this to seem as if this is
Yes.
disjointed. There was significant anger. And in the
Right.
midst of it, God says, you were supposed to pray for them. And not only was that very clear in terms of he had something for us to do, which we, by his grace and direction, had actually had us do, you know what I mean? But it was signaling to me both then and later that just like it says in Isaiah 55, that his ways are higher than mine and they are not mine. Period. And so I don't like the fact that my son is dead, but I know I couldn't have made that decision on my own.
Oh, right. Yeah. Wow. That kind of actually leads into direction I want to go into next. This whole thing about, I was a Christian and God let this happen. If God is so good, why didn't he stop this, knowing how much pain this would bring me and my family? So does this seem to fit in with the pattern that God seems to have in your life where God interrupts our plans? And then there's that period of in between. And then there's blessings beyond what we could think or imagine, which includes coming out of that place of suffocating darkness, because I may not be able to see that I can come out of the darkness, but we know the scripture that says that God can do above and beyond all that we can imagine or think. And I feel like that verse is for us, not this wild ministry, ha ha ha, I can imagine a lot and God's going to do even more than that. I think it's for us in our place of darkness that we can't see a way out of this darkness, but God can. And not only can he see a way out of the darkness, he can say good on the other side of that. And he can see life and meaning and purpose and calling. And so that pattern, let's talk about that a little bit. What can you share with us about that?
Yeah, that pattern has absolutely been present in my life over and over and over again. It goes like this, similar to how you described. Mick has a plan, and God interrupts that plan. Then there is a period of in between, and then there becomes blessing beyond our wildest dreams. And I think it's really important to define blessing.
Yes.
Because, man, in the world that I live in, blessing is often equated with dollars and cents,
Or
and
good things.
And that's yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
what we consider,
right,
yeah, things,
yeah,
good
proper
things.
nouns, exactly,
Yes.
yeah, and it's not always that. Luke's death was God interrupting our plans, okay, because up to this point. I'm 31. My wife is 32 at the time. We'd been married for a half dozen years. And our expectation is that now that we've been single without kids, right? Now it's time to start a family. And as mentioned before, as long as God, or sort of implied before, as long as God stays as far away from me as possible, and I stay far away from him, and I get to do my own thing up to and including starting a family, all will be well. And that was ultimately my plan. We've been single together, we've been married without children, and now it's time for a family. So we're going to start a family. And he said, I have different plans for that. You need to become my son in a meaningful way first. So there was that period of in between. And for us, that was a total of 18 months. But shortly after, we were green lighted for intimacy, which is, I think that's usually like 6-ish or 8-ish weeks out post pregnancy. We got pregnant again. I mean, we're probably 8 weeks out. We get pregnant again and miscarried.
Oh,
And
wow.
There was a miscarry very early on, but that was painful as well for us.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So you've lost two
but
children.
yes, we tend to not look at it that way.
Yes.
But
Mm-hmm.
for sure, that is absolutely what happened. And we
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of respect and a lot of sympathy and a lot of care for folks that have had miscarriages and stillbirths at any gestational age,
Right.
period, because we
Mm-hmm.
fully believe in respect in the sanctity of life. So, yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But as we typically tell our story, we talk about four, because we have three living children,
Mm-hmm.
and then Luke.
Right.
But that pregnancy was driven by me because I was trying to replace Luke.
Ah.
And
Mm.
again, I was like, no,
Hmm.
my plan, my ways, not yours, not yours.
Wow. Can I ask,
So
did you name the second one?
we did not.
Did not. Okay. I was just
Yeah.
curious. Okay.
Yeah.
So I know one of the things that has been a blessing that came out of that is because it also caused your children now are growing up in a home where God is real and God is present. And so that was just another huge blessing that before, we talk about the before and after, before you wouldn't have seen that as a blessing.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, before we had no relationship with God. And I want to define this, I guess, even further, or at least color it in a little bit more for folks,
Sure.
because this is something that I am incredibly unproud of. But at one point, my wife suggested, this is pre-Luke, that we go to church. And I told her no. I said, we're good. You're good. I'm good. We're good.
Mm,
And in hindsight, I do not carry shame from that because that sin has been
right.
repented of. But in the cultural sense, I am ashamed of that,
Hmm.
because it's
Not a proud moment.
such a terrible thing. Yeah, exactly.
But that's where you were at the time.
100%.
Like you said,
Yep,
God's grace. God's grace. Wow.
exactly. Yeah.
So,
But
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
well, and just in terms of the realities now is that ever since Luke's death and how God loved us through all of the grief, and we've had a meaningful relationship with him for now 13 and a half years. He's blessed us with three living children. Our daughter was born 18 months after Luke, so she was July of 2013. And then 5.5 years later, he blessed us with identical twin boys.
Mm.
And he specifically had those boys delivered in the month of January.
Oh, wow.
So Luke's, death and delivery are January, and so
Yeah.
are our living sons. And that was not our intention. We quite literally tried to, and I kid you not, Laura, we played prevent defense to prevent that from occurring. My wife said, hey, as long as we avoid January for a
Mm-hmm.
due date, we'll
Wow.
be fine. So, okay, great. I'm not the
Wow.
smartest man, but I can do that math. And if we get pregnant right away, it'll be pretty straightforward. And
Hmm.
modern day singletons come out around 40 weeks, and modern day twins get forced out earlier by obstetricians
Mm.
that are, whether they know it or not, directed by God
It's almost like
to
God
have
wanted to
those.
redeem that in his own way.
In fact, he later told me that because my wife was vehemently opposed to delivering in January.
Mm-hmm.
Many, many conversations with the OB.
Hmm.
And at one point, the Holy Spirit revealed to me that this was God in control, not us. And that we were going to tell this story because it wasn't about us being in control. It was about him being in control and him specifically doing exactly what you said, redeeming it.
Mm. Yeah.
And it just so
Surprise, God's still in
happens,
control.
1,000%. And it just so happens that 5.5 plus 18 months is 7 years.
Oh,
So
my
it's 7
goodness.
years
Yes.
after Luke's
Yes.
death, we
Redemption.
have
Wow. Mm.
our
Yeah.
two
Some people
sons.
may not understand the significance of biblical numbers like that. So share that. Just so people, seven is a
Yeah,
number of
so
redemption, right?
Yeah, and
And
oftentimes
completion.
completion as
Completion.
well. Yeah, so it's exactly what you were describing there. It's a biblical number that typically is associated with completion and or redemption, and oftentimes was at least for the Israelites, the removing or the ending of a debt that they may have been in as well, or the restoration of land that they may have
Yes.
sold, going back to their rightful owners.
Yep. Yep.
So there's certainly significance of seven scripturally.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we all have a huge hole in our hearts from the death of our child. But the thing is, like you've already said, only God can fill that heart for any of us. We all have that hole. And it's really, I don't know, to me, it's not even that God wants, I don't know how to describe it or say it, not necessarily that he wants to fill it. It's not that he wants to replace our child, but he wants to make us whole within the shatteredness. He wants to bring those pieces back together, and he wants to make us whole again so that that hole isn't there, so that we are complete in the Lord while we are still missing, very deeply missing our child, which we can have both.
100%.
We can be complete in the Lord while we're still deeply missing our child, waiting to be united or reunited with them.
Absolutely. And that's
Yeah.
been our experience as well.
Mm,
Exactly what you described.
yeah. So, Mick, your story, which is really God's story, is just amazing. We serve such a wonderful, amazing, just merciful, good, faithful God, don't we?
Yes, we do.
So, I
Yes,
want
we
to,
do.
yeah, I want to give you a chance to share about your show, When You Look, and it's with the question of coincidence or God. And I know I saw the motto of the show is God is evident in everything and every story when you look. So tell us about your show.
Yeah. So I host a podcast called When You Look, exactly what you were mentioning there. And ordinary people come on, they share their extraordinary story. And then the listeners get to decide, was that coincidence or was that God? And the stories are mind bending. They are absolutely amazing. And we have the openness, the intellectual honesty on our show to recognize that not everybody is going to believe that something that they heard was God.
Mm-hmm.
And yet at the same time, our motto is that when you look, you will see him.
Yes.
And it's a bit of a, slightly different take on how Jesus was talking about, seek and you will find, knock and the
Mm-hmm.
door will be open. But it's a collection of people sharing amazing stories and people having the opportunity to decide, did they hear God in action or did they hear a coincidence?
So where can they find that?
So we're on YouTube at When You Look Show. We're on all of the podcast platforms as well. When You Look, you can find us on all of those locations, or whenyoulook.com can direct you to all of those online platforms as well.
All right. And we will put a link to that in the show notes. Can they go there to connect with you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody that wants to chat further, there's a contact us button through whenyoulook.com.
All right. And I want to give you a chance. Any last thoughts or words of hope or encouragement, that you feel like is from the Lord, especially for those who are questioning God's goodness because he didn't step in and stop the death of their child?
Yeah. I think I would suggest two different pieces from experience, Laura. And the first of which is that God is Lord over everything.
Yes.
And so the pain, the hurt, the sin, the death, the life that we are living, the air that we are breathing, he is Lord over everything. And as I mentioned earlier, Isaiah 55 has been particularly impactful for me as an adult, just to simply say, I do not understand all of this, but I can rest assured that he's already told me that his ways and his thoughts are far beyond mine.
Mm-hmm.
So that puts me then mentally into a position of, I'm not supposed to have figured all of this out.
Right.
So that's, for me, that's kind of point number one. And then point number two is simply that what I have found through my life experience has been when I have completely poured my heart out to God in prayer And I mean as raw, okay? Not in whitewashed language, but when I have completely poured my heart out, whether that included sadness, whether that included anger, whether that was joy, whatever it was, up to and including, as I said before, and I'm not proud of this, but even using a four-letter word, okay?
Right.
God was able to handle all of that. He knew it was coming anyway. And I'm not suggesting that
Right.
every prayer be filled with expletives, but what I am saying is that when I go to God with everything, he's more than capable of handling that. And I think that that's exactly what he wants. He doesn't want my whitewashed words. He doesn't want my corporate speak. He wants my heart. And when I pour it out, whether it's joy or anger or pain or sin, confession, whatever it may be, he's there. So my encouragement for all of the folks that are listening, that are still dealing with, very acute pain, whether that's from loss many, many years ago or very recent loss, take every bit of it to him. Dump it into his lap and watch what he will do with it, because he is good. Even when it doesn't seem like it to us, he is good.
Yes, that's a great way to end it. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us today, Mick.
Been a pleasure, Laura. Thanks so much.
Wow, I was so moved by Mick's story and what he had to share. I don't even want to call it a story, though. And testimony feels like such a common word in the Christian world. I know it's in the Bible. We overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. But I think sometimes we just throw that word around so much it doesn't mean a whole lot. But wow, especially for an uncommon result in the death of one's child, having that be what brings you to him in a way of salvation. Mick and I are both praying that you heard exactly what the Holy Spirit wanted you to hear. Not only hear it, but absorb it, take it into your soul and your spirit, and that today might even be a pivotal point in your faith, especially if you have been struggling with your relationship with God. From what I can see, several of you have already gotten your copy of my newly released book, The Bible's Grieving Parents. In fact, you helped it rise to the #1 bestseller in its category for a little bit, so thank you. If you have not seen it or heard about it, I'll put a link in the show notes that will take you to both the Amazon page that tells you about it, and obviously you can order it there. It is a Kindle book right now, and there will also be a link to where you can find out more about it and get it as a downloadable PDF from the GPS Hope website. If you have the book and you have found comfort and encouragement and hope and help in its pages, would you please take a few moments to give it a rating and a review? Your words may be just what another grieving parent needs to decide to get the book for themselves and to discover the hope God has for them also. Every review helps spread this message of comfort, faith, and healing to the shattered hearts who need it most. You can be part of the growing number of grieving parents who are sharing hope with those on the road coming up behind you. I'll even make it easy for you by putting a link in the show notes that will take you straight to the page on Amazon. Just scroll down until you see where you can give it, hopefully, a 5-star rating, and then write a few sentences on why others should get this book. This review isn't for me, it's for bereavers who are looking for the same hope that you have found. Let's go ahead with this week's birthday segment. Jacob Rhodes was born on September 28th and left us at age 21. Shay Thomas Patno was born on September 29th and left us at age 15. Aaliyah Henderson was born on October 1st and left us at age 4. Samuel Seat was born on October 4th and left us at age 28. As always, we celebrate with these families the day these children came into the world. We know it will always be a special day and worth taking the time to celebrate. If you would like to have your child's birthday added to our birthday segment, I would love to be able to do that for you. Just go to gpshope.org/birthdays, and I will share your child's birthday with the listeners the week of his or her birthday. As you heard, Mick discovered that the deep hole left by their son's absence was actually a God-shaped hole that only God could fill. Out of that dark place, God met both him and his wife with love, hope, and the kind of peace they so desperately needed. God met them with his own son who died, which was Jesus. Yes, we all have a pain that goes so much deeper than we can put words to. Yes, we find ourselves in such a dark place that we didn't even know existed. Yes, when our child leaves this earth, most of us are not suicidal, but we just don't want to be here anymore without our child. We can't even begin to imagine living out our lives with them gone. Yes, we have so many questions, many of which will not be answered this side of eternity. But we have a choice. We can push God away and stay in this horrible, tormenting, dark place, or we can choose to cry out to God and let him comfort us, bringing us hope and bringing light back into our lives, letting God begin to fill that place of pain, that hole that we have in our heart. We know our child will never be replaced, but God can come in and he can bring peace while we're still in pain. Just like we talked about the period of in-between, if you can't see anything good yet, it means God isn't done yet, because he does still have blessings for you that you don't know about and you cannot even begin to imagine. So, HOPE, hold on. Pain eases. There is hope.